So imagine you are standing on a beach, right in the middle of this, like, massive, violent hurricane. The wind is howling, waves are crashing, and everything around you is just being violently torn apart and scattered.
Right, total chaos.
Exactly. But right there, right in the center of all that chaos, you see a perfectly constructed, incredibly intricate sandcastle. And not only is it surviving the storm, but it actually seems to be, using the wind and the rain to build itself taller, adding new towers and repairing its walls faster than the storm can tear them down.
Which, that sounds completely impossible. It defies our whole fundamental understanding of how the physical universe works, because things are supposed to break down over time, not build themselves up.
Right. And yet, that impossible sandcastle is us. It is every single living thing on this planet. So welcome to another deep dive. Today, we are taking on this massive existential mission for you.
We really are.
Yeah, we're pulling together decades of biology, quantum physics, and thermodynamics to answer one of the biggest questions imaginable, like, why does life exist? And how does it persist in a universe that seems absolutely determined to, tear everything apart into complete chaos?
It's a phenomenal question. And to answer it, we have to trace a very specific path today. We're going to journey from the harsh volcanic chemistry of early Earth all the way down into the microscopic, counterintuitive realm of quantum biology.
Oh, which I am so excited for.
Yeah, it's wild. And finally, we will zoom all the way out to the grand cosmic laws of thermodynamics to see how living things actually fit into the universe as a whole.
I promise you, by the end of this deep dive, you're going to look at a simple green leaf on a tree, your own digestive system, and even, like, your messy bedroom in a completely mind-altering way.
So to build that understanding, we have to start with a deceptively simple question. Before we figure out the mechanics of how life survives, we have to ask why it bothers sticking around at all.
Right, like, what's the point?
Exactly. When we look at the immense resilience of life, it's so tempting to think nature has this grand purpose or like some conscious interest in keeping us alive.
That is definitely the default human perspective, I think. We look back at asteroid impacts and ice ages, and we see life bouncing back every single time. It feels like a master plan, Like, nature really wants us to be here.
It is a comforting thought, definitely, but the scientific reality is a bit more stark. Nature actually has no conscious interest, no master plan, and no ultimate goal. Nature is simply a blind filter based on natural selection.
A blind filter, meaning there's no end game it's trying to reach at all.
Precisely. If you go back to the early Earth, we're talking about an environment of extreme volcanic activity, ammonia oceans, constant lightning strikes.
Just a terrible place for a vacation.
Right, awful. And in that primordial soup, simple elements like carbon, hydrogen, oxygen, and nitrogen were just bumping into each other completely randomly. And eventually, just by sheer statistical probability over millions of years, a molecule formed that happened to have the chemical ability to make a copy of itself.
So it wasn't trying to become a cell or a dinosaur eventually. It was just a chemical reaction that repeated.
Yes. And the environment simply dictated which of those replicating structures survived. So if a replication error, like a mutation, made one molecule slightly more stable in boiling water, it stuck around while the others broke apart.
Okay.
Fast forward a few billion years, and you see the exact same principle. The Homo lineage, our ancestors, they developed traits that allowed them to adapt to shifting climates. The dinosaur lineage, faced with a sudden catastrophic change, did not.
Ah, I see.
There wasn't a conscious choice by the universe to prefer mammals over giant reptiles. It was just a matter of which biological configurations could withstand the conditions of the filter.
Which brings us to the concept of the selfish gene, which was made famous by evolutionary biologist Richard Dawkins. The idea is that the drive to survive doesn't actually belong to the organism at all. It belongs to the genetic code itself.
That is the core of it, yeah. Genes have one blind chemical directive, and that's to replicate. Biologically speaking, an elephant, a bird, or, a human being is essentially just a highly advanced survival machine.
Okay, let's unpack this. So basically, a human being is just a highly advanced meat taxi built by genes purely to ferry themselves into the next generation.
Basically, yes. We are complex vehicles. The genes that built the most adaptable machines are the ones that are still here today.
But wait, I have to push back on that a little. If we are just cold, calculating meat taxes for selfish genes, how do you explain human altruism? Because people do incredibly unselfish things all the time. A parrot will sacrifice themselves for a child.
Right.
Or a stranger will run into a burning building to save someone they've never even met. That really doesn't sound like a blind survival machine looking out for its own replication.
That is a very valid point, and it's one evolutionary biologists have debated extensively. The answer usually comes down to kin selection and the mechanics of tribal survival.
Okay, how so?
Well, when a parent sacrifices themselves for a child, they are actually protecting their own genetic code. It's just housed in a newer, younger vehicle.
Okay, that makes sense for a family. I get that.
Yeah.
But what about the stranger in the burning building?
That is where it gets really fascinating. For the vast majority of human history, we lived in small tribes of maybe 50 to 100 people. And in those tribes, almost everyone was closely related to you.
Oh, I see.
Yeah, so a strong instinct to protect your neighbor was functionally an instinct to protect your own gene pool. Today, we live in these massive global societies, but we still have that ancient biological wiring. So running into a burning building to save a stranger is arguably a beautiful misfiring of a tribal survival instinct built by our genes.
Wow. That is a sobering way to look at heroism. We think we are the main characters acting on pure nobility, but our biology is just pulling the levers to keep the DNA alive.
Exactly. Our consciousness naturally looks for narrative and purpose. We look at water flowing down a mountain, and we might poetically think the water wants to reach the ocean.
Right.
But it doesn't have a yearning. It's just following gravity. Life doesn't have a conscious yearning to persist either. The structures that survive the filter just survive.
Okay, so if we are these biological machines built to navigate a very harsh universe, we must be operating at an unbelievable level of efficiency. And when you actually look at the mechanics of living things, basic chemistry, like just molecules bumping into each other randomly, isn't fast or efficient enough to explain how we manage to stay alive.
It absolutely is not. If life relied purely on classical chemistry, many of the biological processes keeping you alive right now would be way too slow, or they'd waste far too much energy to sustain a complex organism.
So what's the alternative?
To understand the true efficiency of life, we have to look past standard biology and dive into quantum biology.
Which is a phrase that sounds like pure science fiction, I have to say.
It really does. But it is very real, and we have the experimental data to prove it. At the microscopic atomic level inside your cells, the familiar rules of classical physics break down, and the bizarre rules of quantum mechanics just take over.
Oh.
A perfect example of this is a phenomenon called quantum coherence.
Let's ground this in something familiar for everyone. We're talking about photosynthesis, right? How plants eat sunlight.
Yes. When a plant absorbs a photon from the sun, it creates a tiny packet of energy called an exciton. This excitant needs to travel from the outer edge of the leaf deep down into the reaction center of the cell, where it can be processed into chemical food.
And under the old classical physics model, scientists thought this energy packet basically hopped clumsily from molecule to molecule, like throwing a ball down a rocky, uneven hill.
Exactly. It was assumed to be a random walk, and if that excitant is just bouncing around randomly trying to find the reaction center, it should be losing a massive amount of energy as heat along the way.
Makes sense.
But when scientists actually measured the efficiency of this transfer in certain plants and bacteria, they found it was operating at near 100% efficiency. Almost zero energy is lost.
Which means the bouncing ball theory had to be totally wrong.
Entirely wrong. And we know why now, because researchers fired incredibly fast lasers, essentially microscopic strobe lights, at these photosynthetic complexes to track the energy.
And what did they see?
What they observed wasn't a solid particle bouncing down a hill. At the quantum level, that excitant behaves as a wave. It utilizes quantum coherence to take multiple paths through the plant's molecular structure simultaneously.
Wait, simultaneously?
Yes, it explores every possible route to the reaction center at the exact same time, instantly finding the absolute fastest, most efficient path.
Okay, I love the analogy the sources used for this. So imagine drinking a thick milkshake. Trying to suck it up through one tiny straw is classical chemistry. It's hard work, there's a lot of friction, and it takes forever. Quantum coherence is like magically drinking that exact same milkshake through 20 straws at the exact same time. You're doing the work simultaneously across multiple channels. It's basically a biological superpower.
That is a perfect visualization. Life leverages quantum mechanics to operate at the absolute maximum efficiency allowed by nature.
That's incredible.
But finding the fastest route is only helpful if a route actually exists. What happens when this biological machine hits a literal dead end?
Right, because sometimes there is a solid physical barrier in a chemical reaction. In our macroscopic world, if you throw a tennis ball at a brick wall, it just bounces back. If you don't have enough physical energy to smash through the wall, you are stuck.
But in the quantum realm, we encounter a second phenomenon called quantum tunneling. If a particle, like an electron or a proton, doesn't have the required energy to get over a barrier, there is a mathematical probability that its wave function will simply extend through the barrier.
Whoa.
The particle creates a tunnel and just appears on the other side.
Without breaking the wall, it just phases right through it.
It phases through, and this isn't just a quirky parlor trick for physicists in a lab. It is happening inside your stomach right now.
Wait, really? In digestion?
Yes. Your enzymes facilitate chemical reactions like digestion by moving protons and electrons around to break down food. Often, there are massive energy barriers in the way of these reactions.
Okay.
If your body had to wait to build up enough classical energy to push those particles over the barriers, digesting a single meal could literally take years.
Which would be a terrible survival mechanism.
Exactly. So instead, life uses this quantum cheat code. The protons in your enzymes simply tunnel through the energy barriers, speeding up chemical reactions by millions of times.
Here's where it gets really interesting, though, because that is fascinating on a day-to-day survival level. But the implications of quantum tunneling get much deeper when we look at DNA. This is where biology and quantum physics dictate evolution itself.
Yes. We mentioned earlier that evolution requires mutations, random errors in the genetic code that occasionally provide a survival advantage. We now believe quantum tunneling is a primary driver of those errors.
How does that work?
Well, the two parallel strands of your DNA are held together by hydrogen bonds, and within those bonds sit single protons, acting like little physical bridges.
But those protons don't always stay put.
No, they don't. Occasionally, one of these protons uses quantum tunneling to just pop over to the wrong side of the hydrogen bond.
And this is where the mechanism of mutation happens. Because DNA-based pairs, like the A's and T's, the C's and G's, they fit together perfectly, like pieces of a jigsaw puzzle.
That's right. Their physical shapes match precisely because of where those protons are located. But when a proton tunnels to the wrong side, a process called tautomerization, it subtly changes the physical shape of that puzzle piece.
Oh, I see.
So now, when the cell tries to divide and copy the DNA, the biological copying machinery comes along, feels this new shape, gets confused, and accidentally grabs the wrong matching puzzle piece.
It misreads the code.
It misreads the code, the sequence changes, and that is a mutation.
So if I'm getting this right, the literal engine of all evolution on Earth, the reason we aren't all still single-celled organisms in volcanic pools, is basically just protons doing magic tricks and teleporting through solid walls in our DNA.
It is a profound realization. Evolution is driven by quantum probability.
That paints a picture of life that is incredibly intricate and honestly borderline magical. We are these highly ordered survival machines, using wave mechanics to eat sunlight and quantum teleportation to digest food and evolve.
We are.
But this extreme level of organization presents a massive, universe-breaking problem.
Yes, the paradox of entropy.
Because everything we just discussed, the DNA, cell division, enzymes, it's highly structured. But physics tells us the universe absolutely hates structure.
To understand this tension, we really need to define entropy. In physics, entropy is a measure of disorder or randomness in a system. Imagine a simple 2x2 grid painted on the floor. 4 squares. If a fly lands in that grid, there are only 4 possible places it can be. That represents a state of low disorder or low entropy. It is contained and easy to track.
But if you expand that to a massive room covered in thousands of grid squares, the fly could be anywhere. There's vastly more uncertainty.
Exactly, that is high entropy. As a rule, more space, more options, and more heat equate to higher entropy. Things naturally want to spread out and become less organized.
Like dropping a glass on the floor.
Right. Or if you leave a hot cup of tea on a table, the heat naturally dissipates into the room. If you knock over a house of cards, it naturally collapses into a messy pile.
Yeah.
You will never ever see a messy pile of cards suddenly harness thermal energy from the room and jump up into a perfectly structured house.
And that isn't just a casual observation, right? It is the second law of thermodynamics. The total entropy of the universe must always increase. Everything is constantly moving from a state of order to a state of disorder.
The universe is marching toward a state of complete, even chaotic stillness.
So here is the paradox for you. If the universe mandates that everything must fall apart into chaos, how is life allowed to build itself up? Does life break the second law of thermodynamics?
It's a great question.
Because a human body is basically a walking, talking castle of extreme order. I know the sources mentioned how this exact paradox is often used in philosophical and religious debates as proof that life required a divine creator or an outside supernatural force to break the rules of physics.
It's an understandable conclusion. If the river of the universe is flowing heavily toward chaos, life looks like a fish swimming backward upstream.
Right.
But what's fascinating here is that modern physics has a very different explanation. The reality is the laws of physics remain entirely unbroken. Life doesn't cheat this second law of thermodynamics at all. It actually relies on it completely.
Wait, how does building a highly complex human brain out of disorganized elements rely on things falling apart?
The key to resolving this paradox lies in understanding the difference between local order and global disorder. It is true that life creates an incredible amount of order locally, meaning within the physical boundary of its own body,
Okay.
but it does so at the extreme expense of its surrounding environment.
So we are essentially stealing order from our surroundings.
That is one way to look at it. The physicist Erwin Schrödinger coined a term for this: negative entropy or negentropy. A living thing takes in high-quality, highly ordered, low-entropy energy from its environment.
Like what?
Think of sunlight hitting a leaf or you eating a highly organized piece of food like an apple.
Right, the apple has structure.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Your body takes that low-entropy apple, uses its organized energy to build and maintain your own cells, and then it expels high-entropy waste and radiates heat back out into the universe.
Oh, I get it.
The amount of disorder you create by radiating heat and expelling waste is mathematically always greater than the amount of order you maintained inside your body. Therefore, the total global entropy of the universe still goes up.
It's exactly like cleaning your bedroom. You spend an hour folding the clothes, making the bed, organizing the books on the shelf. Your room gets incredibly neat and ordered. You have created local low entropy. It looks like you defied the chaos of the universe.
But to achieve that local order,
You had to burn calories.
Yeah.
You started sweating. You radiated body heat out into the rest of the house. You disrupted the air currents in the room.
Yes.
If you measure the total system, the room, plus your body, plus the heat you added to the house, the total messiness of the universe actually increased because you cleaned your room.
That is the exact mechanism. Life is a biological room cleaning machine that pays for its internal neatness by heating up the rest of the house. In physics, we call this a dissipative structure.
Dissipative, meaning it dissipates or scatters energy.
Yes. Life is not a static object. It is a dynamic process. Think back to that sandcastle on the hurricane we talked about at the very beginning of the deep dive.
The impossible structure surviving the chaos.
Exactly. When we first introduced it, the sandcastle seemed like it was fighting the storm. But as a dissipative structure, it isn't fighting the hurricane at all. The hurricane actually built the sandcastle.
Wait, what?
When energy flows through a system rapidly, like violent winds across a beach, the system will naturally generate complex temporary structures to help dissipate that energy more efficiently.
Oh, I see.
A whirlpool in a draining bathtub is a dissipative structure. It forms a highly ordered spiral,
No.
but it only exists to help the water drain out and reach a state of disorder faster.
So life, a plant, an animal, us.
Hmm.
We're just incredibly complex whirlpools. As long as the sun keeps pumping low entropy energy into the earth and we keep eating, the whirlpool of our body keeps spinning, chewing up that order and spitting out heat.
We are temporary palaces of order, entirely sustained by the universe's inevitable collapse into chaos. Entropy is a gradient, like a mountain. Just as water must flow downhill to generate hydroelectric power, energy must flow from low to high entropy. Life is just a stream flowing down that mountain.
So what does this all mean for you? Let's look at the journey we just took. We zoomed from being selfish survival machines to the 20-straw milkshake of quantum coherence, to protons walking through walls, all the way to life being a localized room-cleaning engine on the universe's inevitable march toward chaos.
It fundamentally changes how you view your place in the world. It is beautiful, but also strangely humbling.
It really is.
And it raises one final, lingering thought for you to consider long after you finish listening.
I'm ready. What is it?
We established that structures like whirlpools, hurricanes, and biological life naturally emerge simply because they are incredibly efficient at dissipating energy. They help the universe increase its entropy faster than if they weren't there.
Right, because we burn through energy rapidly to maintain our internal order.
So if that is true, does that mean life isn't just a lucky, random, statistical accident in the cosmos? Could it be that any planet in the universe with a strong enough energy flow, like a hot sun shining on a cold rock, is actually thermodynamically mandated to create life? Not because the universe loves us or has a grand purpose for us, but simply because biological life is the most mathematically efficient way to help the universe reach its chaotic, high-entropy end a little bit faster.
Wow. So we aren't just surviving the storm. We're the storm's favorite tool for burning itself out. The hurricane built the sandcastle just so the sandcastle could help blow everything away faster. That is an absolutely staggering thought to leave on. Thank you so much for taking this journey with us today. Go look at a leaf or your messy bedroom and just marvel at the quantum cosmic machinery keeping you alive. We will catch you on the next deep dive.